In this video, I'm going to break down the design of this really cool yard trailer that Brian put together for his riding lawnmower. And this is really cool and pretty simple overall. It's just a simple trailer that you can use for, moving leaves around or, hauling mulch, different things. And Brian put this together with just some ordinary materials, including wood and some off-the-shelf EMT electrical conduit, and then some of these fittings that we manufacture in upstate South Carolina, so you can build all kinds of things with EMT conduit. This was shared a while ago, back when we had black fittings. Now we have silver, but you can paint those really easily if you want. But silver is, corrosion resistant, and we paint it zinc to match the conduit, which is really cool. And essentially here, this is just a frame that he put together, and he used a handheld tubing bender to make this 90-degree bend in each corner, as we can see here. And so essentially, from what I understand, it looks like this goes all the way up and then bends around in the corners, goes through the T connector to the other side, and then into the 180-degree connector there in the middle, which that connector breaks up horizontal spans, as we can see here. It terminates inside the connector. Same thing going to the other side, bends around, terminates in the 180-degree connector. And that connector also allows you to add a support. And normally we see it kind of oriented straight up and down, so that you can use this for adding your verticals in your build, for longer builds that you need to support. But he's using it to add this horizontal sleeve that's going to act as the axle for the cart itself, which is really cool. Then we can see the two T connectors there in place, and we'll see the finished frame here in a moment. But that's the main part of the frame that supports the plywood. And then here we can see a lot of progress between that first picture and now. But essentially, he has a saddle bend, which is really fantastic. You just use that handheld tubing bender for this as well. But that goes from this piece of, or this T connector, all the way up, saddle bend over the axle, all the way through another 180-degree connector, and then another saddle bend for this piece of conduit that extends out and attaches to the lawnmower. Really fantastic. We can see a ton of EMT conduit electrical one-hole straps, and that's what he's using to secure this plywood that he cut out. And I should mention that you can customize the dimensions of your EMT conduit projects really easily with a handheld rotating pipe and tube cutter. And that's exactly what he used to, customize the dimensions. Then of course you'll need to cut out the wood to sit on top of your frame. And then he used these one-hole straps to secure that wood to the frame. And then whenever you're building your frame, you just use a 5mm hex wrench for maker pipe connectors. You don't have to do any welding or any drilling or anything like that, which is really cool and makes projects like this pretty accessible no matter your skill level. And then we can see here that we've got this axle tube that we mentioned early on from one side to the other. And then he's got these pneumatic wheels that are on both sides of that piece of conduit. And essentially, if he used the solution that I think he did, which is the one we've recommended on the channel and a lot of members of the community have used over the years, it's essentially a long threaded rod that goes from one side to the other, goes through the wheel, and then you'll want to use wheels that have bearings already in them, and then you just use some washers and some miscellaneous hardware to secure the wheels. But before you put the threaded rod inside of the empty conduit, you want to put some kind of sleeve in there to take up the gap. You don't have to do that, but it definitely helps a lot. And we usually use some of the PE irrigation tubing, and like I said, I'll link that video down below if you want to check that out. That's a really good solution, not too complicated to add wheels to your build. And that's pretty much the main part of the frame to allow this thing to roll. Then, of course, we've got the plywood that comes into play. And like I said, that's mounted to, and sits on top of the frame. And then he added some wood here to act as some guardrails on both sides and in the front. I guess technically the back. Actually, I don't know what that would technically be, but as you can see, just added some guardrails to keep things from falling off if you set it in there. And this would be really great for leaves or, mulch, like I said. He said he's using it for hauling wood around the yard, which is really cool. But then here we can see how he mounts it to his lawnmower, which is actually really simple. Essentially just has this piece of conduit that we saw that saddle bends over the frame going up, and then that is just hammered on the end to be flat. And then he just uses a bolt to pin that to the rear mount of his riding lawnmower, and then that's of course going to swivel as he moves around. And it's not the cleanest solution, but it's going to work really great and allow him to ride around and allow this to hinge back and forth and be a really good solution and really easy to make. So that's really awesome. Then we can see, if we go back to this first picture, here it is all in place. It's painted to match his lawnmower, and it looks really cool. And not too complicated, but a really great solution and a great frame that you could put together for doing all kinds of things around your yard. So really awesome. Thanks so much, Brian, for sharing this idea. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those down below. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.